Hey, welcome to Socialism for All. Today's date is March 20, 2021. And in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the Movement for a People's Party, its platform, what it stands for, and we'll also be looking at a video of Jimmy Dore speaking with some of the lead organizers for Movement for a People's Party. If you like this video, please click the like button and the subscribe button. Please also consider supporting us on Patreon. There's a link to that in the description of the video. So the Movement for a People's Party is a political effort based in the United States that, as far as I understand, grew out of the Bernie Sanders campaign of 2015 and 2016 when he first ran for the Democratic Party presidential nomination. As we know, Bernie Sanders failed to secure the Democratic Party nomination. Many people felt that he had been cheated. There's actually a good documentary called Uncounted, the Story of the California Primary, or something to that effect, that is, I think, about 45 minutes long and goes into a number of different pieces of evidence that I think are significant. We also saw kind of a similar thing in 2019 and 2020, where the rest of the Democratic Party really ganged up on Bernie and the Bernie movement. Nevertheless, Bernie Sanders did endorse Hillary Clinton and did stay with the Democratic Party, again running in 2019 and 2020, as I just mentioned. And I see the failure of Bernie Sanders to disavow the Democratic Party after 2015, 2016 as a really key political failure in U.S. history. Bernie Sanders, as I've talked about many times, was filling stadiums of people who were attracted to the progressive message of at least neoliberal capitalism wasn't working, that people wanted major reforms. And I supported this as a socialist because it seemed like we as socialists, Marxists, were able to get involved with that movement and say, hey, these reforms are a great first step, but we also need to get out of capitalism. We got to take away capitalists' political power by taking away their economic power entirely. And but really, if you look at the Green Party or the Party for Socialism and Liberation, PSL, all of these parties start out with bold reforms. Even if you go back to the Communist Manifesto, started out with the 10 planks and bold reforms to move far away from socialism. I think that the Bernie Sanders thing, although it was a little tamer than PSL or the Green Party, and one could say in hindsight, perhaps, he was co-opting some of those things, watering them down a little bit, just to feed people into the Democratic Party, as I think now is the case. There was a lot of action going on in that movement. Like I said, I found a place for myself as a Marxist to get involved and radicalize more people and to talk about capitalism versus socialism. It was a good thing. Anyway, coming back to Movement for a People's Party, there was a draft Bernie movement spearheaded by an organizer named Nick Brana. We're going to be hearing from him later in the video, talking to YouTube personality Jimmy Dore. Well, the Draft Bernie movement was basically trying to pry Bernie Sanders away from the Democratic Party into either an independent party or maybe the Green Party. I'm not sure actually if Draft Bernie was specific about that or not. But, that's what I would have liked to have seen is Bernie Sanders in 2016 to have said, all right, Hillary won, you ran a crooked primary, whatever. I'm endorsing you, but I'm also walking away from the party. We are either forming an independent Labor Party or I'm joining the Green Party, which that actually would have been my preference, to see him join an existing party that already has ballot access in like 45 states or something, that already has some infrastructure. And we are going to sweep in 2018 and 2020. We're going to crush both of your parties. That's what I think needed to happen. You had a guy with political experience who was filling stadiums, so he had experience and popularity. And really, the movement could have done a lot of work there. So I think that up to this point, we're okay. Where I personally disagree with Movement for a People's Party is, what's the point? I think it's redundant. You already have the Green Party as far as like a kind of mass left party. Why do this? Well, Howie Hawkins of the Green Party said that he spoke with MPP people and they told him they thought the Greens were too socialistic. Really now? So basically we have Movement for a People's Party. I mean, the Green Party already is not very successful electorally. They can get people onto like city councils and mayors and, mayoral seats. That's important, but it's not a mass movement. I fully support the Green Party personally. I think that we need to take a mass party like that and put a lightning rod on it and wait for the next, perfect storm to give us like a lightning moment, kind of like the Bernie Sanders movement. Except this time we need to do it outside the Democratic Party and channel that energy instead of into a bourgeois party that's never going to change, like the Democrats, and funnel that 1.21 gigawatts directly into the flux capacitor of an independent political party that is working class oriented. So what you have here with the Movement for a People's Party is they think the Greens are too far left. And I can't understand that. I mean, if you're opposed to the Democrats, find me the part in the Green Party platform that is too far left. I don't get it. I don't get it. If you're left of the Democrats, the Green Party platform should be a no-brainer as a mass coalescence, like starting point, mass, economic demands. That's it. They've got a pretty good start, actually. And as far as, appealing to Marxists, tiny segment of society that we are, the Howie Hawkins Green Party of recent years has called explicitly for the social ownership of the means of production. So, we're there. We're using the language of collectivizing the means of production, and we have a bold series of reforms to lead the charge. Okay, as far as electoralism goes, as far as organizing a political party goes, I think it's as good as you can get. PSL has, at least according to some, more of a vanguardist approach. It's more Marxist-Leninist. They use democratic centralism. I don't think that that's appealing to most people in the United States. I don't think that that is going to be a mass party. I don't think necessarily that that's what they're trying to do. So I'm by no means trying to like rain on PSL's parade. It's neither here nor there. I have more experience with the Green Party, and I think it's just fine. Is it flawed? Everything is flawed in this world, but I think that it is a very good starting point. If more Marxists want to get involved and make it more Marxister, go for it. Nothing is stopping you. You see people talking on Twitter sometimes about we need to like take over the Green Party. No. You just need to participate in the Green Party. It doesn't need to be taken over. It's literally already catering to you. Like, it's already Bernie plus in terms of if you liked Bernie and even wanted him to go further left, the Green Party should be right up your alley. Literally all you need to do is get involved. So Movement for a People's Party, why? I don't see it. And if you're claiming that they're going to somehow be successful in ways that the Green Party wasn't, I don't think so, because the Green Party hasn't been successful due to structural problems in society, systemic issues, not because of something about the Green Party, I would say. The Green Party had a lot of success with Ralph Nader in 2000. The Democrats came down on him and the Greens on us because George W. Bush won the 2000 election. Never mind that that's not how it works, that logically none of those arguments made sense. They landed at the time, at least among, people who were horrified that George Bush was elected. And, to be fair, Bush and Cheney, those were a horrifying 8 years. But the Democrats also work hand in glove with the Republicans, so I don't know how much the Democrats actually have to complain about. So in this video, let's turn now to the Movement for a People's Party platform. We've already analyzed the Green Party platform and the PSL platform here on this channel. Let's get into the MPP platform and see where, how it stacks up with the Green Party. Also, a charge that is often leveled at MPP is they're just Twitter-based grifters trying to collect dues money, and, they don't really have any intention of turning this into a serious effort or whatever. I don't know about that one. I think that the first point, that they're just redundant with the Green Party and it's not going to be any different, is the main thing. There's also a third point or concern, I guess, that could be raised, which is like, well, if you're right of the Green Party, is this going to be some weird crypto-fascist, like libertarian thing? Let's get into the platform and figure it out. So reading now, our platform, Movement for a People's Party, quote, "This People's Platform emerged from Bernie Sanders' first presidential campaign platform. It was developed, voted on, and adopted by our members in March of 2018. The final People's Party platform will be developed and passed by members at the founding convention in 2021. So commenting, this is their jumping off point, essentially, for everything but from March 2018, so 3 years ago, up to now. And I guess they plan on, working on it some more at the convention because this was developed by a small group of people. All right, first section, an economy that works for everyone. An economic bill of rights. So subsection, strong unions and workplace democracy. The American middle class was strongest when a third of our workforce was unionized in the 1940s and 1950s. Wages have stagnated, and inequality has risen in proportion to the decline of unionization in America. A thriving labor movement is vital to economic justice. Support the rights of employees to organize into unions, collectively bargain, and strike. Repeal all anti-labor laws, including right-to-work laws, and the rest of the Taft-Hartley Act." So, quick comment there. I make that exact same point regularly on this broadcast. Unionization peaked in 1960. And exactly what they said, inequality has risen in proportion to the decline of unionization in America. Labor movement is key to a socialist movement. Key. We went down from, like they said, about 30% unionization to like 7% unionization right now in the private sector. It's higher in the public sector. That's absolutely correct. And they're going further than Bernie Sanders by saying repeal all of the Taft-Hartley Act. Bernie Sanders just wanted to repeal parts of it. Okay, no argument there. My only complaint or objection would be framing this as the American middle class. We should not be trying to recreate the middle class. In other words, a working class or petty bourgeoisie that, felt comfortable, doesn't really fundamentally change capitalism. You're just turning back the wheel of history to a time when capital was not as consolidated and concentrated in so few hands, but that is the natural course and progression of capitalism. You just can't maintain that. We need to move beyond capitalism and have the rule of the working class and socialism. We need to change the mode of production from privately owned industry operated for profit, that's capitalism, and change it to collectively, socially, publicly owned industry that is operated for use or to meet need, not for profit, not to create exchange values to be hoarded by capitalists, etc. All right, proceeding. Shuttered businesses and production facilities often leave workers and surrounding communities in financial ruin. Grant workers the option to collectively purchase factories and plants as an alternative to shutting them down. Reverse the outsourcing of American jobs and renegotiate trade agreements that have proven disastrous to workers worldwide. So comment there on that paragraph. So basically what they're talking about is having some sort of built-in, if you're going to close down a factory, you would need to offer the option of a worker buyout. If you go to usworker.coop, so usworker.coop, there is the U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives. They have a lot of literature about worker buyouts and conversions because right now, the baby boomer generation, who is reaching retirement age and just end of life, they own a lot of stuff, a lot of workplaces. And in most cases, they think that they're going to turn over their capital, their workplaces, to their children. But in most cases, the children don't want it. And then what happens is they either just shut down completely or they get bought out by like some giant, capital firm. So both are not good for workers. You either completely lose your job or now it's under, the reign of like Bain Capital or something like that. And, there's going to be layoffs and they'll probably just sell it off for parts, watch the movie Wall Street, etc. So, having that as an option would be tremendous. So good idea there. It's also compatible with socialism. The only thing I would say is this renegotiating trade agreements that have proven disastrous to workers worldwide. I mean, all of the free trade agreements are there to reduce national barriers to the flow of capital. A lot of times Trump ran, for example, on renegotiating trade agreements. And it's this kind of pseudo-populist thing that's supposed to protect workers. Really, though, I mean, the kind of right-wing populist arguments for ending NAFTA really have more to do with trying to protect the petty bourgeoisie of the United States, those nationalists. And, they try to get workers to buy in on that. It's like a smaller version of a rising tide lifts all boats, but basically just trying to exclude the big capitalists and, go to the, people who operate more on a state or county level kind of a thing. So anyway, the renegotiating trade agreements, I think there just needs to be a much larger discussion about that, because not to say that a socialist United States or any other country wouldn't renegotiate their trade agreements, but the way that this is often presented is kind of more of a nationalistic argument. That's not necessarily what we're looking for. We're looking for something that protects workers and restricts capital, and that's often not exactly the way that it comes up. Okay, but that's really another video for another time. Okay, continuing with the third and final paragraph. Democratize the workplace by encouraging the creation of worker cooperatives. Modern corporations are completely undemocratic. Comment, all corporations at any point in history are completely undemocratic. Back to the text. Workers don't share in the ownership of the company, elect leaders from amongst themselves, or have any say in the company's direction. Unelected investors and executives hoard the wealth that the workers produce, leaving them just enough to survive and continue generating profits. Our ancestors brought democracy to government, and now we must extend it to the workplace, where we spend much of our waking lives. Working people should participate in management of the corporations that they contribute to, just like they participate in the management of the country where they live. Oh boy. Worker cooperatives build unions directly into the fabric of the corporation. So commenting now, that's the end of that paragraph. Yes, more worker co-ops would be great. They are not socialism. I want to make that really clear. You need much broader national changes to suppress the bourgeoisie to get socialism. Worker cooperatives, yes, you can certainly have a strong cooperative sector in a socialist economy. I don't know what to say about this democracy stuff as far as, okay, so our ancestors brought democracy to government. Not really. I mean, they took it away from the monarchy. Okay. I think this is just not the greatest framing. And now we must extend it to the workplace. I would put it more like this. I think it's a little bit more accurate. Political democracy is kind of putting the cart before the horse. The real power in society is economic. So without economic or industrial democracy, political democracy is meaningless. I would put it a little bit more like that. Working people should participate in management of the corporations that they contribute to. Again, the extent to which workers participate in the management of the country, not the greatest model for what you want to extend to the workplace, because it's a sham. And worker cooperatives build unions directly into the fabric of the corporation. So again, nothing against cooperatives, but you need much, much larger changes to the economy before really that's sustainable at all. Otherwise, you're really on the playing field of capital still. And they can buy you out. They can compete with you ruthlessly, shut you down that way. We didn't end chattel slavery just by out-competing it. We defeated it through war. So, why do we think we're going to end capitalism just by out-competing it with co-ops? As a reform, sure, bring it on. More co-ops would be nice. However, there have been times we've had more co-ops in the United States. The Knights of Labor around 1900, late 19th century, set up a huge network of over 1,000 cooperatives as alternatives to the capitalist factories because conditions were awful. And then they were made extinct. So it's just not the solution necessarily that I think some people think it is. And it's not a substitute for confronting capital more directly. Okay. Next section, modernizing our infrastructure. From land to sea, our infrastructure is in a perilous state of disrepair. Enact a Green New Deal, putting millions of Americans to work in good-paying jobs that repair our crumbling roads, bridges, airports, dams, harbors, and waterways. Modernize the electrical grid for a renewable energy future. Repair our aging and leaking drinking water pipes, meters, and wastewater treatment plants. Expand bus lines, subway systems, high-speed rail, and other means of public transportation. Reduce public transit fares to broaden access and take more cars off the road. Create millions of living wage jobs, modernizing the infrastructure that powers American life and commerce. Classify the internet as a public utility and bring the country online with universal high-speed community broadband that covers rural communities. Ensure swift federal disaster relief and recovery to cities, states, and territories struck by natural disasters. Citizens of the richest country on earth should not have to languish for months on end without basic necessities like the thousands in Puerto Rico who continue to suffer the loss of electricity following Hurricane Maria. Boost America's high-tech innovation with investments in basic research and STEM education. Reignite the country's passion for space exploration with an ambitious manned mission to Mars. Empower NASA and academia to pursue an understanding of the origins of life, our universe and space, the final frontier. Okay, so that's the modernizing our infrastructure section. I mean, I might quibble with a point here or there. Generally speaking, though, this is, entirely compatible with the existing Green Party, which I feel like is going to be the trend through this whole document. I don't know. Again, the framing is not socialist. It's not talking about the capitalists who, for example, deliberately starve us of resources so that they can come in, eventually buy things up for cheap, and then, turn them, like after Hurricane Katrina, for example, how New Orleans was rebuilt, but in a very, air quotes, urban renewal type of way, gentrified and, basically lots of people displaced. So very much, I think, the same thing going on in Puerto Rico now. Okay, next section, a fair tax code and modernizing small business. In the 1940s and 1950s, the top marginal tax rate was above 90%, and Franklin Roosevelt proposed a maximum income. While we won't go that high, we will restore higher taxes on corporations and the wealthy, requiring them to pay their fair share of the costs involved in the public infrastructure and services that power their companies, increase the inheritance tax and introduce a wealth tax for multimillionaires, raise the capital gains tax, which allows billionaires to pay a lower tax rate than nurses and truck drivers. Small businesses employ half of American workers, level the playing field for small business owners. They can't afford corporate lobbyists who bribe politicians or lawyers into setting up offshore tax havens. Close tax loopholes that allow multi-billion-dollar corporations to pay effective tax rates of zero. End corporate welfare as we know it. Ban corporate inversions and the use of offshore tax havens that cost our country more than $150 billion in annual tax revenue. Ban the practice of no-bid government contracts. Okay, so again, I disagree with some of the framing. I think that that's going to be a consistent thing here. But they're talking about raising taxes, closing tax loopholes, closing, not allowing offshore tax havens, etc. Again, I'm not looking to join the movement for People's Party, so I'm not really analyzing it from that point of view. This is more from the point of view of, is this redundant with existing efforts such as the Green Party? I would say yes, including that section. Next section, rein in Wall Street and create public banks. The massive too-big-to-fail banks are much larger and more consolidated than when we bailed them out after causing the Great Recession. They are threatening to crash the global economy and wipe out millions of jobs again. Revive Glass-Steagall and break up the big banks. End too big to jail and hold accountable financial executives who defraud the public. Pass a financial transactions tax and regulate the sale of derivatives. Reduce and cap credit card interest rates. Rein in corporate power by breaking up monopolies, enforcing antitrust laws, and reversing the consolidation of businesses. Ban corporate stock buybacks that are used to manipulate the stock market and taxable income, to reduce investment in R&D, and to inflate CEO compensation. Eliminate conflicts of interest and increase transparency at the Federal Reserve, ensuring that it operates as a public bank for the people of the U.S. Enforce stricter oversight of banks, revoking the banking licenses for those that repeatedly engage in criminal, fraudulent, discriminatory, and negligent activity at the public's expense. Immediately revoke the licenses of banks found to be financing terrorism and drug cartels that presently get off with minor fines. Prohibit banks from writing off fines from criminal activity as tax deductions. Expand public banking and postal banking. Public banks like the Bank of North Dakota are driven by service to their community rather than the profits of distant giant multinational corporation shareholders. They can make affordable loans to small businesses, farmers, students, and government agencies. They save taxpayers money on infrastructure projects, eliminate hundreds of millions in banking fees, and keep profits in the local community, funds that can be returned to the people in the form of better schools, affordable housing, and lower taxes. Charter public banks in each state with regional and city banks, and support a national postal bank similar to those in many developed nations. Okay, that's the end of that section. Again, this is like pretty common sense stuff. I know some people would like to go further than that. I think virtually, I don't think there would be much opposition to any of this. Again, I'm not looking to join. I'm not looking to endorse. That's not what I'm saying here. But just, what's the purpose of this political party that is making a lot of noise on places like, progressive Twitter? Why don't people just join the fucking Green Party? I mean, that's really the thing, is like, what's your excuse today for not joining the Green Party? It's like, if you're interested in things like this, there's a party, it's existed for decades. It has some kind of presence in many localities. Why don't you just do this rather than building a duplicate alongside of it? All right. Last section in the economics part, fair trade. Reverse trade policies and agreements like NAFTA, CAFTA, PNTR with China that have outsourced millions of jobs and created a global race to the bottom in wages. Comment, it's not entirely trade policies like that created the global race to the bottom. It's just capitalism. I mean, it's capital doing what it's going to do. I talked about the trade policies earlier. There are much larger forces at play with those trade policies. I think that this is, somewhat short-sighted, that it's not addressing that in its framing, which is really my most consistent problem with this document. I think that it hits, 75% of points that I think a lot of people would agree on. I think the framing is kind of weak on a lot of these issues. It's not very educational. All right. Proceeding. Ensure that future treaties do not put our government under the jurisdiction of corporate tribunals, known as investor-state dispute settlement. ISDS provisions in NAFTA and other treaties have given corporations the power to sue our government, right down to municipalities, for millions of dollars in projected loss of profits due to regulation. This occurs even in the case of regulations to protect public health and safety or to ensure truth in advertising. ISDS surrenders our national sovereignty to multinational corporations and a supranational corporate judiciary, remove it from existing trade deals, and ban attempts at corporate governance in all international agreements. So commenting there's still just a couple more lines in this section. When we're at the point of ISDS, this is really global capitalist tyranny is at the door. When you have these types of legislation already starting to be put into effect in places, simply ensuring, quote, ensure that future treaties do not do this, you've got to get at the root issue, pushing us to this point. Why are we at this point? That's like the one thing, again, with the framing, I'm just consistently not hearing. And these are the limits of social democratic thinking. It's not just MPP, it's social democrats in general. It's, almost reactive of like, wait for capital to like do the next stage in its heinous, grievous, anti-worker, anti-human, anti-planet behavior, and then, repeal it or regulate it. We need to get away from capitalism entirely. Moving on. America's chief export should not be poverty. We should not be taking good paying jobs from Americans and sending them to sweatshops in the developing world. It's time to embrace fair trade and domestic policies that incentive, I think that should be incentivize companies to keep good paying jobs in America. Okay. That's the end of that section. And it's also the end of the entire economics section. I got to say, this is a little fatiguing to read. You can hear, okay, having read through the Green Party's platform, this is weaker. I will say, the whole thing about how they called the Green Party too socialistic. I mean, I guess reading through their platform, I can hear that. I do not think the Green Party is too socialistic. Now, I happen to be a Marxist, but in other words, I don't think the Green Party's platform is too socialistic, air quotes, for the American working class. I think most people probably would support it. It definitely would be good for people. I don't think really anything in it is controversial to where if it got enacted, there could be some kind of huge blowback of public opinion. If anything, I think MPP, like Bernie Sanders, which this grew out of, it's a little too timid. It's a little too tepid. Is there enough of, I mean, where are they positioning themselves? It's like they're positioning themselves between the Green Party and the Democratic Party. Why do this? And I think a lot of it is just short-sightedness. Social Democrats, as a commenter on S4A recently said, don't see the big picture. They really don't. This is what they come up with, where it's like, take the system and tinker around the edges. Ironically, it's the thing that they accuse Democrats of doing. I think their only problem with the Democrats is not that the Democrats aim too low in the first place, which they do, but that they aim too low in the first place. Well, that's our complaint, but that they have the policies that they have, to social Democrats, that's fine. Their problem is that the Democratic Party doesn't follow through and do them. Whereas the problem to us, socialists, is both their policies suck and they don't even follow them anyway. That is their promises. They tend to promise a lot and then not really deliver. So their end policies, their effective policies, wind up, falling far short of their promises. And I didn't even particularly like their promises in the first place. Thought they were way too. So anyway, that's my take on their economic section, an economy that works for everyone. It aims a little low. Are there significant rifts between this and, say, the Green Party? Could they work together? I think so, unless the reason that this falls so far short is that they really are disguising, a bit more of a consciously middle of the road. I want to say right wing, right of the Green Party, that they're consciously defending a more middle of the road thing. And I'm sorry, but we just don't need more of that. It's 2021. Socialism has been around a long time. Americans have been conditioned to have this totally irrational phobia of it. And it's not time to keep catering to that and to keep coddling it. It's time to decondition people, from having that phobia, not to play into it. I don't know if they think that aiming a little bit lower is somehow going to result in, this sudden reversal of fortunes that the broader left has been, struggling with poor outcomes in. But I for one don't think so. All right, going on to the next section. This should be fun. Defend and uphold democracy. Abolish corruption and restore democracy is the first section within the democracy, I guess, political democracy section here. Corruption is legal and rampant in America. I got to say, too, commenting, I'll bet like just a couple of people wrote this because I feel like the way things are worded It's like one or maybe two people who thought they were kind of clever wrote this up. I don't get the feeling that this document passed through many hands. And to be fair to them, they said they're going to work on it at their 2021 convention this year. But that may also be part of the deficit here, is that it's coming from too narrow a point of view. Okay, anyway. Corruption is legal and rampant in America. Our political system is awash in corporate and billionaire money. We no longer have elections, we have auctions. Okay, we get the point. Politicians say what their voters want to hear and do what their donors want to see. The problem is not a lack of honest politicians. It is a system that structurally incentivizes and rewards corruption. We call it capitalism. That wasn't in the document, that was me. Politicians will serve donors and special interests as long as that is the way to win. Money in politics is the issue that is most hampering progress today. Donations from the pharmaceutical industry keep drug prices high. Donations from the insurance industry block the adoption of Medicare for all. Donations from the prison industry keep harsh drug laws in place. Donations from the military industry keep us in a perpetual state of war. Donations from the fast food lobby keep wages at starvation levels. Donations from the oil lobby prevent us from taking on climate change. Money in politics is the bottleneck that is preventing the dam from breaking on the many progressive policies that the public desperately needs. So commenting there, money in politics, in my opinion, is a significant contributor to the U.S.'s, peculiarly backward, really unusually and especially backward system of, far-right politics that tend to win the day. That is key. There are also other issues. How did we get to this place in the first place? Not a question I feel like Social Democrats ask enough. Also, there are parliamentary systems that have more restrictions on money in politics in other countries that do have some of the same problems that the United States has. It's not the only problem, and ultimately we need to get away from capitalism, because in capitalism, again, the real power is economic. Then the people who control industry are able to buy politicians. It's not just directly through the elections, it's through the media and everything else. All right, proceeding. The issue has grown so severe that a 2015 study conducted by Princeton... All right, I got to pause here. This is getting really tedious to read, I have to add. This is also why I think that not many people contributed to this. This just doesn't read like a platform so much. It's more of kind of an essay. I'm tempted to skip over things here because it's just in the interest of getting on to the video. Let me do that a little bit. I hope you'll forgive me. I'll put the link if you want to read every word of this. But they talk about the Princeton study, that the preferences of the American public have a near zero, statistically insignificant impact on public policy. We've talked about that here on the channel. That is true. People who buy politicians, their opinion is reflected. Public opinion is not reflected in public policy. There's no statistical correlation. So they talk about banning super PACs, independent expenditures, and dark money, shutting down unlimited and non-transparent outside spending, closing the revolving door between Washington and Wall Street, prevent corporate executives from holding elected office or being appointed to regulatory positions, bar politicians from taking lobbyist money and gifts while in office or the campaign trail. This is the principle upon which all others hinge. So you can hear they're really putting a lot of emphasis on political change, and I'm not sure I entirely agree with that. I think this will kind of only get us so far. So quoting again, we must pass anti-corruption laws by referendum where possible and fight for a constitutional amendment that declares that corporations are not people and money is not speech. We must ban bundling and switch to the full public funding of our elections. We must reverse the Citizens United decision that flooded politics with big money. Most importantly, we must build a major new People's Party that stands with the 93% of Americans in soundly rejecting money in politics. The establishment parties are so intertwined with corporate dollars that the money and parties are no longer distinguishable from one another. Big money pervades the organizations down to their DNA. Again, this just doesn't like read like a platform so much. It's kind of an essay or like a rant almost. They are inherently highly centralized, undemocratic, and unaccountable to the public. Um, Skipping ahead, we must also fight for a national initiative power that gives Americans the power to bypass Congress and put laws on the books directly. Through this kind of direct democracy, the people could vote on broad policy strokes like free public college over high tuition and single payer health care over employer based insurance. Um, yeah, okay. So going on to secure and transparent election. Recent elections have proven that our voting system is broken. And okay, I got to stop again because the first section was a lot more succinct. They would just have like 3 paragraphs under each. This has 8 paragraphs under secure and transparent elections. It's again, it's just styled as more of a rant, and this doesn't, I think, really belong in a platform. I'm going to skip that. They're talking about the fairness doctrine in media. It's like basically this giant grab bag of like any vaguely left of the or even the left wing of the Democratic Party. It's like a big grab bag of every talking point that has ever been coughed up by anyone at any point. Um, anyway, defending civil liberties is also in here. We're the most surveilled people in human history. Studies have shown that mass surveillance suppresses our freedom of speech and freedom of thought. Um, okay. Yeah, I'm going to keep skipping ahead. The next major section is respect human rights, health, and human potential. The subsections under that are Medicare for all, free public college and quality education, comprehensive immigration reform, respecting disability rights. So those are the sections under human rights, health, and human potential. Um, Comprehensive immigration reform. What does this say? Undocumented immigrants risk their lives to come to America. They often work hard and dangerous jobs with long hours and long pay, especially in the agricultural, construction, and restaurant industries. It's time to reverse the criminalization of the 11 million undocumented immigrants in America and create a swift pathway to citizenship. Pass the DREAM Act and naturalize all undocumented immigrants who were brought to the U.S. as children. Expand DACA and DAPA. Ensure that Medicare for all extends to undocumented immigrants and allow them to purchase insurance through the ACA in the meantime. What? If you're just doing Medicare for all, why not just do Medicare for all? Or are they saying before Medicare for all passes? There's just a weird way to say that. Protect refugees who come to America and their right to return from trips abroad. Refugee crises in the Middle East, Europe, and the Americas can be traced back to wars and organized crime stemming from U.S. foreign policy. Moving on to respecting disability rights. Nothing super controversial there. The next major section is protect the environment and defend biodiversity. So again, I'm not going to be able to read every word of these, but the sections are clean energy and environment protection, animal welfare, sustainable agriculture. The next major section is stand for equality and justice. First section is restorative justice. Then there's racial justice, equal rights for women, LGBTQIA equality, honoring indigenous rights. The next major section is create a peaceful global community benefiting from technology. First section, man, that is a lot of paragraphs. Wow. There's like 15 paragraphs under a collaborative and peaceful global community. The promise and peril of accelerating technology. Let's read that one. We're getting down to the bottom here. I'll read that one. Modern technology is advancing exponentially and raising questions of tremendous consequence. What was once science fiction is becoming science fact. In the next few decades, machine labor will replace human labor on a massive scale. Genetic engineering will allow us to create genetically perfected children. Again, this is just, I really dislike the wording in this entire thing. And I feel like the criticism is that this just grew out of like some Twitter stars, like it's like some pet project of a few Twitter stars. I've got to say that that's exactly how this reads. It's exactly how it reads. There's no kind of bold vision. It's just like, Let's keep doing what we're doing while reining in the worst parts of it. But it's a bit arbitrary. There's no real principles established. Blockchain will enable direct democracy. Transportation will be driverless. Interplanetary travel and mining will become possible. Wealthy people will gain access to these technologies first and exploit them in an effort to entrench their advantages. In order to avoid a dystopian future, it will grow increasingly important that technological progress be guided democratically, etc. Okay, I agree with that point. It ends with paradise or oblivion. This is not a political platform. I've said that half a dozen times now. It's written more as a rant and really less as a platform. The last section is take care of veterans. I am scanning that section now. So I am not seeing anything in there. It may have been in an earlier section about just ending the wars because it's imperialism, change the system so that it's not relying on imperialism. That would be in my platform. Was that in the earlier section on a collaborative and peaceful global community, perhaps? History books, quoting from that section, history books celebrate the dismantling of European colonialism after World War II. It's time to scale back the sprawling empire of hundreds of U.S. military bases and black sites abroad, deploy those funds to defend the American people against the lethal and merciless enemies that have invaded our shores, poverty, hunger, and ill health. Okay, well, I'm going to end it there as far as reading the platform. There, I have just read probably half of this platform word for word, or a third of it. And honestly, the rest, I would have read this whole thing. They made it incredibly tedious to read with all these sort of weird little bumper sticker slogans that they threw in. Note to anyone involved with Movement for a People's Party, cut this thing down. Wow, was that a long-ass document. Do not have 3 to 15 paragraphs under every section. You want 1 or 2. Period. Period. Or guess what? No one's going to read your platform. I don't know if you're counting on that, but wow, was that not well written as a platform. My take on reading this, I'd say about half of it is directly compatible with the Green Party. Half of it is significantly more watered down. But I think that the people who end up supporting something like this, I think that they'd be just as happy with the Green Party. So, you know, I commented earlier, I think that there is a deliberate effort here to make this all sound a little bit more middle of the road. But again, is that such a large swath of the electorate? Which is what you've really got to look at. Politics, it's never about just my party attracted these people, we're taking power, and no one else matters. You know, you look at the sort of rise of fascism globally, the rise of the far right. As they become very fearful, I think that the internet is going to lead to an increase in workers' movements, like this channel, like many other channels and media outlets and organizations who are using the internet to communicate socialist ideas. They're terrified. They want to use these communications technologies to, you know, basically shut it all down where they can't control us outright. So, Movement for a People's Party, trying to be somewhere between the Democrats and the Green Party. How many people are you going to get? How many people are you going to get when we know a lot of people agree with the Green Party, yet don't get involved? Why is that? Well, because of all the problems with the system in general. I think, you know, are we ever going to see a moment in U.S. history again where, you know, 80% of the electorate's voting? I think that that's highly unlikely. I think if we're looking for change, it's going to come some other way. I think a lot of things need to happen for that. How to say this? I think there's a lot of implicit logic in this document that just kind of takes theories of political change at face value. And what they're trying to say is we can get change in society that's going to recreate the golden age of social democracy. You know, some shade of what happened between the 30s and the 70s, which first of all wasn't good for everyone equally at all. We still had a huge underclass. We still had lots of racism and sexism and heterosexism tied into that. It's part of U.S. capitalism. It just restrained some of the worst excesses. Well, not only is trying to recapture that, trying to do the impossible because it's not sustainable, but is that even desirable? In other words, if you're going to put all this effort into it, why not just aim higher in the first place? I get a real sense of that. They think they're being realistic or pragmatic or, you know, more middle of the road. But I also hear, I think, naivete in that we can make voting work, guys. We can do it. Well, we have like a very long period of history where voting, suffrage was made more inclusive. Where has it gotten us? Not very far. The real power is economic. We need the labor unions again. And they're right. I mean, they were right in starting this out with repeal Taft-Hartley. Are we going to repeal Taft-Hartley? Getting political change getting change for working people through the political system, through the bourgeois government, requires some kind of lightning strike moment in conjunction with an independent left party. I am not sure that lightning is ever going to happen, or it might take another 40 years before, the stars align again. It sure as hell isn't going to come through the Democratic Party. But, that puts it more on the labor movement and things like that. We need to really rearrange things. Putting all this emphasis in trying to get the perfect political platform and this party that just says all the right things to all the right people, forget it. It's not going to work. And I'm very much unimpressed with this document. As a political platform, I think it reads horribly. It's way too long. No one wants to read something like this. They need to come up with something much more concise. Also, the parts to me where it does make sense, just join the damn Green Party in the first place. All right. Leaving this behind, let us move to section 2, the Jimmy Dore video.
As you can see behind me, it says support for a third U.S. political party is at a high point. How high of a point? That's from Gallup, by the way. How high of a point? 62% of United States adults say that parties do such a poor job representing the American people that a third party is needed, an increase from 57% in September. Wow. The poll shows 50% of the U.S. adults identifying as political independents. What? The highest percentage Gallup has ever measured in a single poll. So 1 out of 2 adults in the United States does not identify with a political party. So half the adults identify, a quarter of adults identify with Republicans, quarter with Democrats, 50% independent, no political party. But you can't have a third party. Remember that. You can't do that. In several election years, 2006, 2008, and 2012, Americans were divided as to whether a third party was needed. But since 2012, Americans have consistently favored the idea. Americans' appetite for a third party has never been greater in Gallup's nearly 2 decades of polling on the subject. And now a majority of Republicans are joining the usual majority of independents in wanting that option.
So that's interesting, specifically that previously it was a majority of independents. So you would have people who weren't affiliated with either Democrats or Republicans or any other party who were politically independent. And a majority of that group, the unaffiliated independent group, wanted a political party. In other words, they didn't really want to be independent. They wanted another political party, is maybe one interpretation of that. But that now a majority of people who are affiliated Republican want a new party. But what? Like, what is it that they're looking for? Do they actually just want something more monstrous than the existing Republican Party? Because I think that there's a decent chance of that. Regardless, if you just make another capitalist political party, you're not going to get anything different. You're not going to get anything different. You can't really regulate this system with the amount of power that capitalists have. They operate globally. I mean, for all that people on the broader left want to go on about, how unaccountable the capitalist class is, and they have their own private military and army and navy and all this stuff. Like, yeah, they've amassed an enormous amount of economic power, which they can easily convert into political or military power, etc. People who are currently Republicans, let me tell you, are not looking to end capitalism. So what do they want is the question. And will it just end up being manipulated by big capitalists, whatever this new creation is? You bet your ass it is. Because there are two options. You either confront capital head on, or you get manipulated by them. That's how it works, because we're playing inside of their system. You either go at the control panels and you try to end this system, or they lead you around in circles. That's how it works. Imperialism is the highest stage of capitalism. Global monopoly capital operating on the world scale. That would be the global part. That's the system. That's where we're at. Making political parties that do anything other than seek to destroy that system, it's rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. You can't make any substantial change without that. You're always at their mercy. That's how this system works. Let's continue with the video.
So there is a third party afoot, right? As I've talked about on this show, it's called the People's Party.
So here Jimmy tells us that there is a third party, and it's new. It's Movement for a People's Party. What about the Green Party, which is, of course, the premier national left independent party in the United States? Well, Jimmy Dore has been quite rude to the Green Party in recent years. He had Howie Hawkins on his show and was insulting towards him in many different ways. Jimmy also recently had Jerry White of the World Socialist website, which is part of a Trotskyist outfit, and accused him of having no vision for workers, like having no vision to give to workers. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm a communist. Like, how is that not a vision? But this is the lie that Jimmy Dore is perpetuating. There has been no option until now. Of course, it's just blatantly wrong. I mean, there's also right-wing independent options like the Libertarian Party or the Constitution Party or the Reform Party, or what's the new one? I think it's the Alliance Party. There's all kinds of like other right-wing parties, really, to pick from. So going back to the framing of the poll that Jimmy cited, people feeling that they want, another major new party. I feel like for the most part, people just make excuses not to get involved with the Green Party, and it probably would be a lot of what people want it to be if they just had more participation and funding and volunteers and candidates. Again, they're up against the bourgeois parties who have set the bar impossibly high. You have to poll at 15% to get included in their privately owned debates. I'm not exaggerating. Debates used to be in the 80s, publicly, controlled, and then they privatized them so that they could basically make the bar so high that nobody could get in who wasn't approved. But they think it's going to be different, and they think that they're going to be this party. I got news for them. They're not going to be. The problems that the Green Party has faced, all of them are going to apply to Movement for a People's Party, assuming this thing even gets off the ground. And they're not just trying to collect dues money or whatever, and then just sort of, escape with the money. It's possible. We don't know yet. But, Okay, so a majority of Republicans and a majority of independents want another party. I mean, we had the Ross Perot moment in the 90s. He still didn't win. It got Jesse Ventura elected governor of Minnesota. He was still affiliated, I believe, with the outcropping of that whole effort in 2000. But it petered out, and then it was gone. And then Ralph Nader had a moment with the Green Party in 2000. And then it kind of, again, the Green Party still gets national attention and has ballot access in many states. But it's a struggle. And just the arrogance on display here of like, they're it, and it has arrived, and this thing that everyone's been waiting for, the fucking arrogance. It's just, it honestly blows me away. And I say that as somebody who has been involved for over 15 years with trying to do something else. And man, the arrogance is kind of blowing me away. Back to the video.
And they're starting to get on the ballots. So California becomes the third state to register the official party, peoplesparty.org, right? So it looks like Maine. Does that look like, what is that state? I'm going to guess and say that's Colorado. I'm going to guess. And then I'm going to say over there, that looks like California. I'm not sure. I'm not a geography doctor, but
person.
So by the way, let's bring on the people who are working with the People's Party. He is a frequent guest on the show. He was Bernie Sanders' National Political Outreach Coordinator in 2016, and he's the co-founder of the People's Party. It's Nick Brana. Hi, Nick. How are you?
Hey, Jimmy. Good to see you.
We're also pleased to have with us a tireless activist for getting money out of politics. She's a national director of Move to Amend, which pushes a constitutional amendment to establish that corporations are not people. She is on the advisory council for the People's Party, and we are excited to have her with us. Please welcome Kaitlin Sopoci-Belknap. Hi, thanks. Welcome to both of you.
Hey, Jimmy. Thanks for having us on.
So, let's talk about this.
Okay, before they start talking about this, I think my brain finally got done processing that platform or essay or rant that I read before from MPP. And I think that my final analysis is, I was really wrestling there with the kind of faith that they put in the surface level analysis of how change works and et cetera. I think I'm able to sum it up. And I would sum it up as, this is your brain on anti-communism. This is your brain on when you have systematically pushed out any kind of Marxist analysis from your worldview. This is your brain on anti-communism. This is what you wind up with. It's timid, it's feeble, it doesn't get to the root cause of our problems, and it puts faith in all sorts of bourgeois institutions while trying to remove the bourgeois elements. But of course it will prove impotent in doing so. Let's continue.
About you guys are, how's it? So this is a daunting task, as everybody has told me a million times. But it seems like everybody also agrees we have to do it. In fact, now 62% of the country. So the time is now. Tell me about what's going on with the People's Party and getting registered.
It's almost 2 out of every 3 Americans now, Jimmy, as you showed, that wants a major new party. And half of Americans for the first time being independent. It's truly remarkable. And what we are doing is we're now working as the People's Party to register across the country in all 50 states. We plan on getting on the ballot. And so we're working on ballot access in several different states. And we've officially registered in these 3 and Ohio as well. And we've got others coming in just the next couple of weeks. And we plan also on running candidates in 2022. We're going to run our congressional slate of about 15 candidates, and then we're going to run a presidential candidate. And we are about to open up nominations, in fact, to be a part of that first congressional slate of the People's Party. And so we're really excited to be doing this and to be moving along in building the party, because we all see what's happening with these 2 parties. and the way that they have completely betrayed the American public. The Democrats just literally gave less aid than the Republicans did under Trump.
Well, let me just, you know what? First of all, I just want to announce that I was happy to, I hope, Nick and Kaitlin, that you're happy to hear that Steph officially registered as a member of the People's Party here in California. And
we're super excited about that. And can we just let your listeners know if they're in California? I'm in California too. I'm up in Sacramento. And those of us who are Californians can register into the People's Party right now. We can go to the Secretary of State website, or we can pick up a voter registration card at post offices. And all you need to do is just say that you want to register, re-register, and then choose other for your party, and then write in People's Party. And you will be registered in the People's Party like Steph and me and thousands of people every day who are joining up.
And so I would like to officially announce right now, this is a perfect time, that I will be joining the People's Party officially today after the show. So look at that. I'm going to do what you just said.
So I can't wait to see how this one turns out. I mean, Jimmy Dore, with his massive ego and, history of railing against things that he perceives as having burned him, this should be real interesting. The People's Party has been talking about doing this for years and years. I know sometimes efforts take a while to get off the ground. I'm aware of that. But is it real this time? You have Nick Brana sitting there talking about the Democrats just gave less aid than Trump did. Okay, look, so you've created a new bourgeois political party. Congrats. Now what? You're one of many. I don't know if you know this. Creating a party doesn't actually, amount to anything except for something for your resume. It doesn't actually directly lead to change. And I think really what you've done here, you've made the progressive Twitter party. That's what you've done. And I think that that's going to be the vast majority of people joining this party is progressive Twitter. Just a hunch. But yeah, the Democrats are awful. We all know this. It's like, it's also the party for the people who wish the Democrats were truer to their word. I think that's also actually maybe is the full extent of the guiding ideology of this party. There's no other broader analysis. And it's not a workers' party. It's a people's party. This is populism. Done several videos on why populism falls far short in the age of imperialism. Let's proceed.
How about that? I know you have a lot of people already signed up to your organization, right? Over 100,000 people or so, right, Nick?
More than 150,000. That's right. Who've signed up with us? 150,000 members, and we had more than 1 million people who attended the People's Convention back in August. And so that was truly a remarkable show of how much of like the hunger for a major new party in the United States. It was trending number 2 on Twitter for 5 hours straight. It was, and this was in the middle of a professional basketball game and the VMAs, and it was competing with that, and it was still up there as the thing that everybody was talking about. We held that a week after the Democratic and the Republican Party conventions, and that really showed the appetite for a major new party in this country. And at the end of that convention, our members voted, the attendees voted, viewers voted, and overwhelmingly, by like a 99% majority, voted to form a major new party in 2021 that is free of corporate money and influence. And that's exactly what we're doing.
And so when you got those 1 million people to come to your convention online, virtually, right, online, I'm sure there was a lot of articles written about it, right? Like in the Washington Post, New York Times, MSNBC, CNN invited you on, right?
Not so much. That's the main reason why this is hard. I mean, as you guys have both been talking about, the numbers are there. We have people who want to do this and who are ready to leave both of the major two parties, but they don't know that there's an alternative, which is why it's so important, shows like yours, and also why it's so important that everybody talk to everyone else you know and tell them to connect with the People's Party and to, you know, first off, if you can't join the People's Party, then at least leave the Democratic Party or Republican Party and become an independent. That's like step one. And then, you know, it's just a small step over to a party that actually supports your values, because unfortunately, as an independent, that could mean anything. And that doesn't build any power for us. And that's why, you know, that's basically the, like, I'm out, fuck this option. But we need to actually organize together so that we can actually take on the Democrats and the Republicans.
So far, they haven't even mentioned the Green Party. They're acting like it doesn't exist. I don't know how well that's going to work as like a major strategy for MPP. It's one of the questions that I see come up a lot when I do go on Twitter around things related to the People's Party. But honestly, you know, what she just said about people don't know that there's another option. People do know that there's another option. Literally everyone over probably the age of 30 remembers the Ralph Nader moment in 2000. That was kind of major news, actually. And Ralph Nader was making it onto cable TV and things that were a little different at that time. And anyone older than that certainly remembers Ross Perot. I mean, he was on, Dana Carvey did him on SNL all the time. I mean, that was major. You know, if it's on SNL every week, it's pretty major. People know that there are alternatives. That's not the problem. That's not the problem. It's people's despair. There's a whole litany of other problems. I've talked about this in other videos. It's kind of, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole again, but there's a whole host of problems why people don't get involved. It's not as simple as not knowing that there aren't options. If this is the kind of analysis that they're offering, launching this party, I gotta think this is mainly a feel-good effort of patting themselves on the back that, hey, we did it. We turned like Twitter rants into a political party. Hooray. I don't know if they're going to be as prepared for the disappointment when this thing spins out, as I believe it most likely will. I want change in this country. I'm a Marxist. I want to end capitalism. I want a society where the working class is the ruling class. I want us to have power. I don't see this as a viable avenue towards it. I think that it's run by people who their heads are up their own asses, and they have some of the right ideas. They're really lacking in overall theory. And you heard right there, just after I got done in my last comment, saying that, you know, it's like the progressive Twitter party, he immediately went on to the measure of success was that they were trending on Twitter. Sorry, but that only goes so far. As for the 1 million people who turned up for your online conference, okay, but ultimately this is about attaining power, building a mass movement. I do not see these people leading to that. And again, it's the way the platform was written. It's the sidestepping of the issue of the Green Party. I hope Jimmy Dore brings that up because I'd love to hear some comments on it. To me, it is the number one most obvious question in this whole discussion of electoralism, third left parties. It's not like we have no data. We have a lot of data. We have a lot of analysis to date, and it's like they're just choosing to sidestep and ignore all of that. Back to the video.
It's amazing. We watched the Democrats just negotiate down aid to people, and they were negotiating with themselves. It's nuts. And we have a president who won't give a press conference, won't even give a State of the Union, and no one's bothering to even pressure him to do so. It's amazing what's going on. So what do you think is your biggest impediment to having a successful launch of a third party? What do you think? Because I think the biggest impediment, my honest, is that you're not going to get any coverage, and when you do get coverage in the press, it will be negative and trying to dismiss you and trying to discourage people from joining. Right now, the Washington Post has a dedicated reporter just for progressive news. Have they done did they do a story on your million?
Yes, Dave Wiegel did do a story on us when we did hosted the People's Convention. And of course, it was middling, I would say, not the most favorable. A lot of dismissal of independent parties.
Of course.
That's typically the kind of coverage, unfortunately, that you get. We were also covered by Politico when we held that. But yes, and actually very recently we were covered by a Matter of Fact. Soledad O'Brien actually interviewed. Just sent someone to interview me, and we had a segment on that show, and that reaches into more than I believe more than like 150 media markets.
That's amazing. You're kidding me. I didn't know that. How did that go? Because it's been my experience. It's been my experience following Soledad that she challenged Power once at CNN, and we covered it. It was great the way she challenged Power. And I was like, you're going to get fired for doing that. And then they did fire her. But now she's back in the mainstream, and it looked like she had gotten her mind right. So I'm surprised that's great that she did that, right? So that's a good thing.
We were happy to see that they reached out to us, and they sent a camera crew, and they interviewed me for this segment about how many Americans want an independent party. I mean, at this point, Jimmy, it's undeniable. I mean, look, you've got Donald Trump talking about, creating like a patriot party. You've got almost 2/3 of Americans who want it. You've got the Democrats providing less relief than the Republicans when they had full control of the presidency, House, the Senate, and so like it's just people abroad look over at.
Okay, I'm going to stop here. That whole media thing aside, I think that's not super relevant. What he's talking about, he comes back to so many people want a third party. And he cites as evidence for that, Trump is talking about starting a Patriots party, and then the Democrats are bad, and boom. If that's the extent of the analysis from the guy who started this party, then this political party is basically, a Kyle Kalinske CNN reaction video turned into a political party. There's nothing here. There's nothing here but Democrats are bad and people want change, and it's fucking horseshoe theory at best, if it even gets that deep. So let's back it up again. So you're going to make a political party out of, going back to that initial poll, that independents and Republicans, a majority of them, want a new party. And for some reason you think that they want the same party. I'm not really sure about that last part. But so you're going to make a political party out of progressive left Twitter users and disaffected Republicans? Good luck. So also, I did a video on Kim Iverson 2 weeks ago. One of the things that she said in the clips that I showed was she was attacking Movement for a People's Party because they weren't accepting enough of MAGA people. They weren't accepting enough of the kind of far-right Trump white nationalists, who basically he just said is like, Trump, he wants to start a Patriots party. That's going to be fucking full-on Nazi party. If Trump starts a party, what do you think it's going to be? So anyway, I just don't see how that helps you trying to start more of like a left, center, left party. Like, who cares that maggots want a party? That's going to have nothing to do with you. They're kind of trying to claim in advance that all these people are going to like Movement for a People's Party. That would be a fucking disaster, getting those people in the party, because I don't think it would take many of them to tank the whole thing. Now, splitting the GOP could be helpful. If the Trump faction broke off from the GOP, ultimately, though, capitalists are large and in charge. That's not going to change. I mean, if you got it to the point where The Republican Party broke into two halves to the point where they split the right vote so that the Democrats were the only party that could operate on anything more than a regional level. Then maybe you could run left parties against the Democrats. Maybe. Again, though, we as socialists, Marxists, looking at the situation, know it's not just about winning elections. We're trying to build a mass movement to confront capital, and you don't just do that through government. So there are much bigger questions. Now, to be fair, we are talking about a political party, but it's also really fair to bring up the criticism of how much can a political party do, even under the best of circumstances. And as I've laid out, I don't think these are the best of circumstances. These people don't seem to really have a clue. I personally am somewhat well-versed in non-duopoly parties, things that are other than Democrat or Republican. I have for a long time been following the Green Party and the Libertarian Party, not necessarily as a supporter, but following them, aware of what they're doing. And, again, like I said, there's the Constitution Party. There are all these other kinds of parties out there. These people sound new to the concept of third parties. Still no mention of the Green Party, and just an incredibly convoluted orientation to what they think is going to work here. I didn't, maybe Kaitlin is going to weigh in on Jimmy's question about what are the biggest barriers. Because he kind of Nick Brana kind of glossed over that and just started talking about, oh yeah, Trump wants to start a party. Like, you think that's going to help you? I don't get it. All right, back to the video.
Yes. And you've pointed out often how other countries are when they put in when they engaged the lockdowns around COVID, they at the same time gave their people a universal basic income. They gave their people aid to be out of work, basically, to be able to take care of themselves. In the U.S., they didn't do that, and so it's the same thing abroad in basically every other wealthy country, where you have countries of a few million people, like Norway, and they have several parties.
They have like 8 parties. I was in Norway a couple of years ago. We went there to cover a bullshit freedom peace conference, and they have like 7-8 parties in Norway. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly how many they have. And, that's a country of only a few million people. It's about 10 million people, I believe. Here we are in 330 million people in the United States, and we're supposed to choose between 2 parties, and both of them are funded by Wall Street. And so that's no choice at all. We just have 2 wings of the same party, of the single party state here in the U.S. And that's a complete aberration internationally.
I think you're right that the corporate media, either lack of coverage, just sort of blacking us out, or if there is coverage, it's dismissive and tainted. But I take hope in the fact that there are millions of younger people who have had no experience in their whole life of either party meeting their needs whatsoever. They're not particularly loyal because neither party has done anything to court their loyalty whatsoever. And so, and also, even though there are all kinds of problems with social media, number one being the corporate ownership of it. And so at any point, things can be blacked out and censored, and we see that. But at the same time, when the Green Party, for example, which is kind of the best example in our lifetimes of another attempt to try and grow an alternative party, they didn't have a way for people to talk to each other directly because we didn't have social media at that point. And so those 2 things, these generations of people who have had it and who can see through, who are not particularly enamored by Rachel Maddow or MSNBC or Fox, or who don't pay attention to that kind of media, or the Wall Street Journal, who are looking to places like your show to find alternative information, and then who have no loyalty to the either 2 parties and have so much of an easier time seeing through that they're kind of two sides of the same coin. And we saw that with this relief package, where the Democratic Party, as you said, not a single Republican voted for it. And yet they still negotiated down, and for no reason whatsoever. And it's like, you have to be pretty stupid to look at that and not see what's going on at this point.
Right.
Okay, working backwards, this was our first mention of the Green Party, which to me, again, is the elephant in the room. Now, Kaitlin there mentioned it, but I think this was still a distortion. She said the Green Party was past tense, like it doesn't still exist. It, of course, does. It's as strong as it ever has been, more or less. The Green Party, quote, at that point, didn't have social media. What are you talking about? The Green Party ran in 2020, ran in 2016, runs in every presidential election, runs candidates for state and local and county office. What are you talking about? At that point, we didn't have social media when the Green Party was around. So she's trying to say that MPP is going to be different from the Green Party because now we have social media. That makes absolutely no sense. That defies logic. She just invented a world in which the Green Party, A, no longer exists, and B, when it did exist, air quotes, did exist, there wasn't social media. This is absurd. And it actually ignores the fact that the Green Party arguably did better in 2000 when everybody was back on America Online and nobody had fucking broadband yet. So, and then Ross Perot did even better than that. Of course, Ross Perot was kind of a right-wing, independently funded, rich guy. So if that's the way that they're going to handle analysis, I just don't see this going very far. So also she used the young people argument. I think that there's a little bit of something to that younger people don't have allegiance to either party. I mean, that's kind of always been the case. I do think that there is, I think, more social and political awareness now than there was maybe 20, definitely 30 years ago. I would agree. Society's more polarized. I mean, the class piece has really worn down, and people are feeling the effects of that. It's the process of getting politicized, it's much quicker now on any issue, and people are having to confront political questions and make political decisions on everyday issues in a way that there just wasn't a pressure to do this. Well, let's say before the 2008 crash. It's really touching everyone now. So, and that's accelerating, that's increasing. So the young people argument, I'll give her about half of the points on that I think she was aiming for. I don't think it's that explanatory or predictive of success for them. Finally, the international standards, many other countries have many more parties. Yes, they have proportional representation, parliamentary systems different from the U.S., where you get 5% of the vote, you get 5% of the seats. It's much easier to stake out a place in government and then an existence for your political party, rather than in the United States, it's just for parties that don't take power. Who wants to be in a political party that doesn't take power ever anywhere? Really, no one, except for like hardcore, diehard believers in the cause. And, people who, benefit somehow from the membership dues. For the most part, people join a political party to get power and have their interests represented. And, you can get 7 or 8 parties going if you're getting some amount of power out of it and the hope of getting more power. In the U.S., that isn't the system. I still think it's not harmful necessarily to join a socialist political party in the U.S. You can get education, organization, and activism, non-electoral activism, out of it. I haven't heard any mention of that at all. This is really, it's like all of the wishful thinking of the progressive left rolled into one is this party. Back to the video.
Well, what's going on is that there's a one party. It's the party of Wall Street. It's the military-industrial complex, health insurance, and fossil fuels. I mean, that's it. They've captured both parties. But what do you say to people who say, well, there already is a third party? There's already the Green Party. And what do you say to that?
Well, I've been a Green. I was a Green since I was 18 years old. I, registered as a Green first. I served as a Green elected official actually for 12 years in my local community in far northern California. So, I have a strong commitment to independent politics, and I really appreciate the work that the Green Party has done to lay the groundwork to get us to this point, to show that there is an alternative. There are folks in the Green Party who are excellent organizers. But at this point, I think that we need a different name. It needs a different style. The Green Party, there have been too many elections where the party has been cast as spoilers. There's too much baggage. And I think that, again, with newer generations, there isn't a sense of, what the Green Party really is, except for what mainstream media has painted it as, and frankly, some of the issues that do come from trying to build an independent party. It's hard work. And so I just think it's time for us to do something new, something different, something with, a progressive populist bent. I think that the Green Party
is that how you
centralizing environmentalism makes sense, but I don't know that that's the best way to come into it these days either.
Okay, so you're saying that the People's Party is going to be more of a populist party than, say, an environmentalist lefty party?
Well, I think that actually the Green Party platform is really excellent, and I think that there's a lot of overlap with the People's Party platform and the Green Party platform. A lot of it has to just do with kind of like branding, if you will, and just the baggage of the past, and the idea that the biggest hurdle is people's idea that we cannot do this. And so that's the biggest thing that we need to overcome. And trying to do that with a party that has not been able to elect anyone to Congress for 30 years, since its inception, I just don't think that that's an effective way to win. And I think our agenda is to win. It's not just to be on the side, giving an alternative vision, but it is actually to take over the place of the Democratic Party, which is where I think the base of a lot of our support would be. It's a party that doesn't at all do what it says that it's about. And so to expose that fallacy and to bring in all of those people who want social justice, who want to address climate change, who want to, close the cages at the border, and all the things that the Democratic Party never delivers.
Wow. So I got to say, call me Kreskin, because did I nail that one? They want a Democratic Party that does what it says. That was what she closed on there. As far as the Green Party, she said basically our platform, it largely overlaps with the Green Party. This is just an exercise in rebranding. Guess what, though? Do you think that the Green Party now, those people are going to defect and join your party? I don't think so, because I do know Green Party people. I don't hear a lot of support for what MPP is doing. You are duplicating the Green Party, and at best, you're going to be kind of splitting that vote. The fact that half the country isn't involved, it's not just a branding problem. You're completely misunderstanding this situation. I don't even know what to say. It's not a question of the Green Party wasn't able to elect people to... You think you will be able to elect people to Congress? Let's get at some root issues here. This whole conversation is fluff. We'll see what Jimmy comes back with here, or if he just brings in Nick Brana. But she basically just said, I was a Green. Our platform is very similar to the Green Party's. We're just kind of rebranding, because the problem is the Green Party are losers, or at least they're perceived as losers. And people want winners without actually addressing why they lost, which is exactly going to be your fate. And then back to, what do we want to be? We want to be better Democrats. There's not enough face palms in the world for that one in my book. That's not what we need. And if anything, kudos from me to the Green Party from moving away. In the past, they were a bit more left liberal. They are going more socialist now. I credit Howie Hawkins on that. And anyone else involved in that. I know that Howie Hawkins was a major face of the Green Party's leftward push. Anyway, there you have it. I mean, they got nothing, but yeah, we're the Green Party. We're just trying a different name, except the Green Party still fucking exists. It's not like they're defunct. They're still there, and they just ran a presidential candidate. Wow. Wow. All right. What else?
So if I was telling people the other day, imagine if instead of the 6 to 10 progressives of the squad that are in the Congress right now that are inside the Democratic Party, imagine if they were a third party. Imagine if they were Greens, or imagine if they were the People's Party. Look at all the power they would have. They would have all the power, and they would have leverage, and they would be able to get things. So if we had a third party, if we had 6 people in Congress right now in the People's Party, we would get $15 minimum wage.
Okay. Jumping in here, I can't disagree with that enough. Jimmy Dore is completely wrong. Yes, the energy from the Bernie Sanders thing that brought together the left, brought us all out of the closet and out of the woodwork for the first time in decades, and was a lightning strikes kind of moment. Yes, that energy did need to get channeled into an independent party and not the Democrats. It's never going to work in the Democratic Party. I agree with that. I strongly disagree. I mean, and that was the only logical move for Bernie Sanders to make in 2016, was to say, we're starting a new party, or I'm joining the Green Party. Why start a new party when we already have a party? And then, come back in 2018 and 2020 and 2022. And you would absolutely have gotten people to national office at that point. Hands down, no question. But is what Jimmy Dore is saying here, that's what I'm disagreeing with, that 6 people in the Green Party being in Congress being all the leverage? Oh, hell no. No. But what we're trying to do is build a mass movement on all fronts, not just political. Bourgeois government is one institution. It is not a cure-all by any means. It would be the start of something, and it would be a rallying point. It would not be instant cure for Medicare for all and $15 minimum wage and all that stuff. It would be a rallying point. They would be under constant attack. And if you look at other governments where there is a Green Party or some kind of left party elected, a lot of times they enter into coalitions. Look at what Bernie Sanders did. They enter into coalitions with the leftmost party. So that's, in effect, what happens most of the time. As socialists, that's not what we're looking for. We want the sweeping revolutionary mass movement. You do need to build organizations, though, in support of that mass movement. It's not just random people in the streets. We need organization. That's labor unions. That's labor federations. That is revolutionary political parties. It's not just like what they're talking about here is just, building the political party not for its organization, not for its educational potential, not for its non-electoral activism potential, but just about getting elected for the purpose of influencing and passing legislation. That is like a tiny part of why we as socialists are clamoring for more organization. It is really, the passing laws part is minimal. We want a broad campaign of influence, grassroots power, community unions, tenants unions, labor unions, all adding up to a point where we are finally ready to sweep power and oust capitalists from, the position of control, from their roost over society. So Jimmy is quite wrong. That's not how it would work, but let's proceed.
And we'd get a vote on Medicare for all, I'll tell you that. And we probably would have got a lot better COVID relief, too. So that's the power of just 6 people in Congress because of the way it is right now. They didn't get, like you said, they didn't get one Republican vote for this bill. So that means it had to pass, and it needed almost every Democrat's vote. And just like before, if 6 of them would have withheld it, they would have all the power. So they're never going to do it, and nobody can figure out why they're going to do it. I've speculated here a million times why. It doesn't matter if you don't take corporate money if you just do the bidding of the people who do anyway. It doesn't make any sense. And so what about the People's Party? What's your stance on taking corporate money?
We're completely against it. So we take zero corporate money whatsoever, and we never will.
Okay, that's a super easy one. No PAC money and billionaire money and all that stuff. Obviously, that's like a prereq. That's a no-brainer. The question here for me, and this is actually, there is like another 10 minutes of the video. Something's up with my video editor. It seems to keep crashing if I try to go beyond that. So I'm going to leave it here. Also, in the interest of time, that works just fine as well. Two main points. The first is that not taking the corporate money, that's great. That's a prerequisite. But when we're talking about building a political party out, that's independent, outside of this two-party system, you really need a lightning strike moment for it to take off. I don't believe that MPP has that. I think that the Bernie Sanders moment was that. But if MPP went out and tried to fill stadiums, would they do it? I think not even close. I think not even remotely close. That's really what you need. You need somebody who can fill stadiums. That's just how freaking politics works. I mean, honestly, like it at a certain level is a popularity contest. Trump could do that, so he became president. And of course, all of the free media time he got didn't hurt. Although, would he have gotten the media time if he wasn't the carnival barker that he is? I mean, you need somebody like that. It's a principle in any kind of performing arts. If you're not, it's why Obama was as popular as he was. He, had a certain kind of charm that appealed to people. Deeply uncharismatic people tend not to win in high office American politics. It's just kind of a thing. So here we've got a political party that seems to me designed to appeal to and be approved by the progressive Twitter left. Great. Now, there are a lot of people, which I think is giving these people an inflated sense of confidence in what they're doing. Is it enough to win major elections? I don't think so. Now, we'll see what actually starts happening when, the ballots get cast and all that stuff. They're only on the ballot in 3 or 4 states right now. Or they're, open to be registered? Something like that in 3 or 4 states. The Green Party had this moment for a while. The Green Party is still getting elected, by the way. It's just there hasn't been that lightning strike moment. So all of that said, I addressed what Jimmy said before about, well, and it's funny, he brought it up, which is if you don't take the corporate money, what does it matter if you vote along with the people who do? Well, and he was, of course, talking about people within the Democratic Party like AOC. But my point was we actually see that in other countries' governments where there are parliamentary coalitions. So, that is not an end in and of itself. But the other point that I want to make is I had concerns about MPP being more of the left-right alliance thing. And to me, from this, yes, it's more watered down than the Green Party. I wouldn't exactly characterize it as like very right-wing. Any concerns about that happening, I think I'm at least relieved at that. So I think the worst outcome here is a lot of progressive left Twitter people are going to be more disappointed and bummed out if that's even possible. Okay, it's a very depressing place, progressive left Twitter. It's just kind of a thing. So here we've got a political party that seems to me designed to appeal to and be approved by the progressive Twitter left. Great. Now, there are a lot of people, which I think is giving these people an inflated sense of confidence in what they're doing. Is it enough to win major elections? I don't think so. Now, we'll see what actually starts happening when, the ballots get cast and all that stuff. They're only on the ballot in 3 or 4 states right now. Or they're, open to be registered? Something like that in 3 or 4 states. The Green Party had this moment for a while. The Green Party is still getting elected, by the way. It's just there hasn't been that lightning strike moment. So all of that said, I addressed what Jimmy said before about, well, and it's funny, he brought it up, which is if you don't take the corporate money, what does it matter if you vote along with the people who do? Well, and he was, of course, talking about people within the Democratic Party like AOC. But my point was, we actually see that in other countries' governments where there are parliamentary coalitions. So, that is not an end in and of itself. But the other point that I want to make is I had concerns about MPP being more of the left-right alliance thing. And to me, from this, yes, it's more watered down than the Green Party. I wouldn't exactly characterize it as like very right-wing. Any concerns about that happening, I think I'm at least relieved at that. So I think the worst outcome here is a lot of progressive left Twitter people are going to be more disappointed and bummed out if that's even possible. Okay, it's a very depressing place, progressive left Twitter. I am not, however, particularly fearful after reviewing these documents and listening to these interviews about it becoming something more nefarious than that, particularly something fascist in nature. As much as these people are trying to be a little more mainstream than the Green Party, I don't think that they're going to succeed at that. So I think mainly this will be an exercise in futility, but, what do I know? The thing for me, the conclusion of this whole video and the real bottom line, we need change desperately. I believe that the kind of change we need can only result in a full-on, head-on confrontation of capital on the level of past revolutionary movements that we have seen. And, we have here people who believe that it's going to be different this time. We just have to make the right political party with the right name, and then everything will work out and we'll get our changes. Part of me, I'll be honest, part of me is triggered by that because it's so frustrating watching this play out over and over and over again. It's like I just want to grab them by the shoulders and just shake them and like shake some sense into them. Like, this isn't going to work. Put your time and energy into something else. And I guess that's my final message. My prediction, this isn't going to work. Put your time and energy somewhere else. If you want to do a mass party like this, just go with the Green Party. There's a lot more experience there, and there's just a lot more experience there. And if you don't want to do some kind of a mass party like this, great. There's plenty of other things you can do. With that, we're going to sign off, and we'll catch you in the next video. And that's the video. Thanks to our current patrons whose names are on the screen. If you'd like to get your name on the screen or just support us financially, you can go to patreon.com/socialism4all and sign up for a monthly donation. You can also follow us at facebook.com/socialism4all. Used to have a page at FOR all, and it got throttled to death by Zuck. Here on YouTube, please click the like button, subscribe button, and the notifications bell. Please leave a comment if you can, and please share our video wherever you're online, your Twitter feed, your Discord servers, Reddit subs, etc. All of that helps more people to see this content, whether it's in the YouTube algorithm or just posting it on other sites. All of that's helpful. All of you out there supporting and promoting this content makes it all go that much more smoothly. We need to end capitalism, normalize talking about socialism today, and it's really kind of our only hope for a better tomorrow. Thanks for all you do, and we will catch you in the next video.